many psychiatrists would argue that we need to speak with the patient. What the patient says is the ultimate truth. But at some point in the conversation, I say, wouldn't it be nice to have an idea of whether or not the patient is being honest with you? And they might take a little bit of offense at that. They'd be like, oh, of course the patient's honest with me. Like I make them feel comfortable. But then I ask them, how do you know if the patient is being honest with themselves?
Welcome to Creating Wellness Moments, the podcast where we dive into the depths of the human psyche, self-discovery, and personal growth. I'm Calvin Wong, your host and fellow explorer on this journey towards mental well-being. Join me as we uncover inspiring stories, expert insights, and practical tips to cultivate a healthier and happier life. Get ready to embark on a transformative experience, one episode at a time. Let's create wellness moments together. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Creating Wellness Moments. So today's episode is all about digital health, and Dr. Bechara Saab is the CEO and Chief Scientist of Mobio Interactive. So Mobio Interactive is actually digital health reimagined. They provide personal health with objective and scalable biomarkers using the power of AI. I actually don't fully understand what that means, but that's why we have Dr. Besh here on the show to find out together. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Alvin, it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
So just to give the audience and myself a better context, can you tell us what Mobio Interactive does?
Sure. We're trying to bring the entire field of mental health care in line with the rest of medicine. Every form of medicine you can think of has made amazing advancements over the last several decades. The way that we treat cancer, the way we perform surgery, the way that we handle infectious diseases. And yet mental health care, psychiatry, unfortunately, is still relying on pretty, old techniques and has not had as much advancement despite the incredible need that is out there for clinically validated solutions. So we feel at Mobile Interactive, and I think a lot of people would agree, that what has held mental health care back is the lack of the ability to objectively quantify what matters to the clinician and to the patient. We have great ways to measure the brain, but they're not scalable, and they don't really tell us what we need. We need to know how people feel. And so what we've done at Mobio Interactive is develop a way to objectively understand how people feel. And we've started with psychological stress. And that means that using computer vision and AI, we can extract biomarkers and we can identify objectively and without bias the level of stress that somebody experiences, and do this very rapidly so we can measure the impact of treatment, measure people over time, and then make clinical decisions using those objective data in real time.
It's quite an amazing piece of technology that you guys have crafted there. And I completely agree with you in the sense where, we have a lot of, in the mental health space, there's this evidence-based therapy essentially. And we're taking a lot of experiences and past experiences to essentially quantify what might be happening in someone, versus the technology that you're introducing now. You could see that in real time, and it's quite personal to the individual, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely it is. So you see all sorts of different profiles of the patients that use our software. What's pretty interesting is we, in addition to getting the objective data, we ask patients, what do you think your level of stress is? And you find these interesting profiles. You find people that are reporting their own stress levels in the medium range, and yet the computer vision AI measure is reporting them way up at the top. And this is indicative of people who have been chronically stressed for so long that they've forgotten, they've desensitized to the sensation of stress. And it's only when they start to see the results from the objective measure that they realize, oh my goodness, I need to do something about this. And then over time, as they continue to do therapy on our platform, their own measures of stress begin to come into alignment with what the computer has been saying all along. And then we can see their overall stress decrease in an objective way. And that type of thing wouldn't have been possible even just a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's the main key, where you talk about how it's objective versus just seeing a therapist, for example. There still is, I know they're quite trained and they're very capable, but there is still some perception in that sense, right? That they have to perceive how someone might be feeling based on what they tell and what they see. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I have conversations with psychiatrists all the time, and I used to be a PI at the psychiatry hospital in Zurich. So many of my colleagues were active psychiatrist clinicians. And, many psychiatrists would argue that we need to speak with the patient. What the patient says is the ultimate truth. But at some point in the conversation, I say, wouldn't it be nice to have an idea of whether or not the patient is being honest with you? And they might take a little bit of offense at that. They'd be like, oh, of course the patient's honest with me. Like I make them feel comfortable. But then I ask them, how do you know if the patient is being honest with themselves? And many clinical psychologists and psychiatrists do have methods to ascertain the level of honesty that people have with themselves.
Okay.
But now we have a tool that actually just tells you straight up, and at that point, I think the majority of them start to come around and they realize, yeah, I mean, it can be extremely powerful to have an objective idea of what's going on, and not just exclusively rely on what the patient is saying or feeling. I mean, I lie to myself all the time, and I think I lie to myself when the things are actually most salient and most important, right? So it's pretty critical to get those objective data.
Yeah, of course. I could tell from my own personal experience, my own ego or mind has gotten to a point where sometimes it's so good at lying to myself that I don't even know it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When would you say that you had this aha moment to seek this kind of technology to objectively define these biomarkers, so we could have not only perception, but real hard evidence to these stress markers or other psychology fields?
As a neuroscientist, I see the brain as an organ, and therefore it can be measured like any other organ. Now, the specific methods that we use, the computer vision and the AI, I didn't a priori think that it was possible or it could work. Let's say I didn't have a lot of faith in it, but I did think it was worth trying. And my co-founder of Mobio Interactive, Mark Thoburn, formed a really good relationship with the University of Waterloo and an established professor there by the name of Alexander Wong. And he had been working on methods to extract out biomarkers using the smartphone camera, or using cameras in general. And so what we did was we leveraged that technology to bring out some biomarkers, and we get out a slew of biomarkers from the face. The face is flush with information. And then over time, we had tens of thousands of people using our platform primarily for mindfulness training. And eventually we had a data set that was so large and diverse that included both the objective biomarkers as well as self-reports of stress, that we were able to train a neural network to then objectively understand somebody's level of stress without needing to have ever even seen that individual before. So that aha moment came through a very long process that I had little faith in, to be fair. And it's often, that's just how it is in science. You don't really believe it until you see the data themselves. And now there's all sorts of different experiments that we've done that make the objectivity and the accuracy of this tool even more compelling.
Well, thank you, Dr. Besh. Well, I'm glad you tried. So I'm sure in a few years, you're really pioneering the how we look at digital health and how accessible it is to the average individual. And so in terms of, you talked about there's a lot of participants who took on this project with the University of Waterloo and yourself with Alex Wong. And what were you actually looking for when you're doing these tests?
Well, with the University of Waterloo, it's really about the deep tech development. And we continue to work very closely with them. We think in the near future, we can obtain valence, how good or bad somebody feels, also objectively, accurately, using a mobile selfie video, as well as arousal. And in this context, we're referring to how strongly somebody's feeling what they're feeling. And with that triple axis understanding of brain health, I think we can truly transform how mental health care is performed throughout the entire world. The research that we've done to demonstrate the efficacy of the platform, because in addition to doing measurement, we also provide therapy. We provide wellness therapy to a variety of patients, particularly when they're on a wait list for psychiatric service. But we also have a large pipeline of interventions that are step-by-step courses that contain psychoeducational components, that contain certain types of neural training, and as well as contain CBT elements to reduce symptom burden. And those interventions need to be clinically validated within the specific patient population. And so we treat cancer survivors for cancer-related postpartum depression. We treat patients that have just been diagnosed with cancer to facilitate the reduction of the side effects that come with the treatment and the duress of the diagnosis itself. We have an intervention for traumatic brain injury, both in kids as well as in adults. We're looking at type 1 diabetes duress, eating disorders, even to try to change the relationship that the brain has with both food and hunger. Postpartum depression. I mean, really, the list goes on. It's what's possible. And we are providing a platform that even other companies that are building digital interventions can come on board and join us, and we can deliver their interventions through our platform, as our platform is leveraged by the healthcare industry for remote patient monitoring, as well as patient and clinical decision support.
Yeah, it's wonderful to hear that you speak about mental health in a quite different way than I would say the general public perceives it. A lot of times we think about people who might have depression or anxiety, stress, that kind of stuff would be going to see a mental health professional. But you spoke about, cancer patients, eating disorders, all these ones that I guess these are kind of, in a sense, minorities that we don't really think about when it comes to mental health, right?
That's true. Yeah, there are some really big indications like major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. But then there are also these, very important underserved clinical populations, and we've made it a priority to focus on those groups because there are just fewer options out there for them, and the prevalence of the need for mental health care is extreme, right? I mean, it's approaching the prevalence of the need for eye correction. And so you look at eye correction. How do we deal with eye correction? We have glasses, we have contacts, we have LASIK, which is done really well. We need that type of technology for mental health care, plain and simple, just because of the level of prevalence. And therefore, it needs to be cost effective. It needs to be extremely efficacious, and it needs to be available to people all over the world.
Hey there, amazing listeners. Before we dive deeper in today's insightful conversation, I want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to the driving force behind this podcast, my very own mental health focused creative production agency, Calvin Wong Media. As you know, creating wellness moments is all about exploring the depths of the human psyche and fostering personal growth. And guess what? It would not be possible if it were not for Calvin Wong Media. We conceptualize, humanize, and bring your story to life using unique storytelling techniques that engages the audience. So, the next time you're inspired by an episode or find yourself engaged in a thought-provoking conversation here, remember, that's the result of the support of Calvin Wong Media and its lovely kinds. If you're looking to amplify your message, tell your story with authenticity, and connect with your audience on a deeper level, reach out to us at calvinwongmedia.com. Now back to the conversation on creating wellness moments. Yeah, absolutely. So if someone would like to get in touch with Mobio Interactive to take on this platform and use it for themselves, or maybe a clinic would like to use it as part of their treatment for their patients, how would they get started?
It was very easy to get in contact with us through our website, mobiointeractive.com. And our platform is called AmDTx, AmDTx, and that's available on both app stores. The version that you download from the app stores will be the same version that a hospital healthcare professional will provide initially to a patient that would be on wait list. It will not contain access to the specific interventions for different indications. That requires a prescription, but you can already get started, and we have validation for the efficacy of just the base platform itself across the entire severity of mental health symptoms. And we've even examined it in athletes and been able to show that it can enhance some aspects of how athletes perform and recover following high intensity exercise. So it's really a tool that everybody can use. And, just to mention, I don't view mental illness or the need for mental health care as anything that would be unusual or let's say even problematic. I don't believe in a world where we can eradicate this. I think it's a natural part of our development. I think the brain, the symptoms that come through many of the mental illnesses are actually in some ways adaptive or protective, and working through them can allow you to grow and actualize and become, just a better performer, more in tune with yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So going through that whole process of mental illness is something that I think most of us will do at some point in our lives. Definitely nothing to be ashamed of. And if you can get help through a clinically validated platform like AmDTx, then that's a great thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. What I really love about this platform that you provided is it has such a wide range of use cases, and it's also personalized in a sense. There's very specific, I guess, lack of a better word, programs to allow people with specific illnesses to essentially take advantage of what you guys are doing there. You spoke about the illnesses being almost like it's like a good thing in a sense. We have to face these struggles, and in a sense we could kind of compare to how, like, weightlifting, for example, you have to fatigue the muscle and tear it in order for it to grow and become bigger. And much like, I guess in a sense, that could relate to mental resilience. How we go through these struggles in turn will become stronger and better people.
Absolutely. And just to extend that analogy, when you do go to the gym, you lift weights or you do any sort of training, you tend to be focusing on a certain part of the body at a time. And that's actually very much the same in our interventions. So, the reason why we have different courses for different patient populations is because we're actually targeting different areas of the brain. For somebody with traumatic brain injury, we want to try to disengage the default mode network, increase activity in other areas of the brain that could facilitate the restoration of function that has been lost as a result of the injury. But if it's, somebody with depression or postpartum depression, then we want to try to focus on their particular affect bias, like how easily you see and perceive positive versus negative things in your environment. And we know that we can change these aspects of how the brain functions to have long-term impact and truly cure, right? Not just address the symptoms, but actually cure the central elements that lead to those symptoms.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I guess coming from a neuroscientist perspective, you could see how the brain is, really individual parts, whereas the general public would say, oh, the brain is just like one organ in itself, and you can't, the way you're dissecting this, so we could actually target the specific parts of the brain and essentially cure them. That's, I think more people should be thinking about the brain in that sense instead of just being a large organ as in itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of like a mushy body in a way, right? I mean, it obviously works together as a whole, and that's very, very important. But you can identify different regions that are important for different types of things, and that's essential for efficient healthcare. Yeah.
So I just had a few more questions. I'm really curious more about your personal journey and Mobio Interactive and how all this began. I know you spoke a little bit with working with the University of Waterloo and Alex Wong, but what are the challenges and struggles you had to face in order to get to where you are today?
Well, too many to list here, but I can say I'm very fortunate that my co-founder, Mark Thoburn, is a great and dear friend of mine. We've known each other for 25 years or something. And it was originally his idea to start the company, and I was early advisor, small investor. But eventually, what we're doing with the company was so compelling, I decided to quit my job and join full time. And I don't know if there have been any particularly unique challenges for us as an emerging company. There've been at times struggles with the finances. There have been times when, big important deals fell through. But we've been able to persevere through that, at least so far, and beginning to gain some traction. We work with some excellent hospitals. The Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario is a strong partner of ours. We have the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto. They've been trialing our platform with their patients with great success over the last 14 months or so. And, I'd say that I'm an optimistic person, and I look back on my past and I tend to, I guess, focus on more of the positive things than the negative ones. But of course, there have been many, many challenges. But I love challenges. For me, challenge and risk is what makes life worth living.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it must have not been easy to have this vision of this essentially like future technology, especially at the time when you're just starting out, to get people to buy into this technology that might have not existed at that time, and really see, I guess you were able to bring through your conviction to see this actually happening. And it's great to see that it's a reality today. And in terms of that, like maybe like 5 to 10 years from now, what do you see happening, and any predictions?
Well, in the very near term, we intend to increase the number of hospitals that are leveraging our platform, particularly as a stopgap for patients that are on wait list for not just psychiatric services, but any type sort of service. And we want to increase how commonly used the platform is as a remote patient monitoring tool as well. And so we're spending a lot of time integrating with EHRs in different markets. And we're really focused on the more developed markets right now as an initial way to gain traction and generate significant revenues. But 5 years from now, I think that we really want to be turning our focus to the developing world, or to the to markets that are not, let's say, the strongest in the world, because that's where you have the greatest proportion of underserved people, particularly in regards to mental health. So my vision for the organization is that we are active in every market in the world. We have clinically validated content, interventions, etc., for every different culture, because we don't just have to localize for language, we have to localize these therapies for individual cultures, even within the same language. That's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to take many other partners to work with us. There's no way that we can make 1,000 interventions in 1,000 languages on our own. So we need partners to come and join us as we bring this to the global population.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I absolutely love how aware and inclusive you are in terms of your platform, and just making it available for everyone, and in the way that suits them in terms of either culture or different countries, languages, all that. And I just deeply appreciate you spending the time to share this technology and talking with me today. And I'll be sure to leave all the information for Mobio Interactive down below here, just so you guys could get in touch. So thank you again so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Calvin. Great speaking.